Hello everyone, welcome back. Yesterday I was shooting this Palmetto AR-15 with this primary arms 1:8 variable scope at 400 yards, and today I brought back my target so that I can assess it. Okay, so I can basically see what happened and see what I can learn from this, and also record this data so that I have it for myself for future reference, and also you guys can also benefit from it yourself. Okay, so this is all budget stuff. This is all the time stuff. This AR-15 that you see here, the rifle was $500 when I bought it. Right, $500. The scope with the mount was $400 when I bought it. Nowadays, you may end up paying an extra $50 because of the inflation and that nonsense. But we're talking budget stuff here. Okay. Now, I did a video on this Palmetto rifle where when I tested it for accuracy at 100 yards, it came in at 1 1/4 inches, right? So it's a 1.25 MOA rifle. Now today, I shot it again at 100 yards, and I only took 3 shots so far today, right? This is the only 3 shots I took today, and it came in again at 1 1/4 inches. Okay, so this rifle from Palmetto that I paid $500 for is shooting very consistently a 1.25-inch group with cheap target ammo. Okay, so imagine if we get some match break stuff in there. So anyway, I got my target here, and what I did yesterday, I set this up at the 400 yards, and I took, now mind you, the day before I had gotten a perfect zero, where my bullets were basically pretty much hitting the bullseye over here, right? So I set up at 400 yards, prone position with a bipod. I did not have the back of the rifle bagged, so it was kind of like I was trying to hold back with my hand. The next time I go out there, I'm going to take a bag with me so I can actually bag the back of the rifle on the, because I think that's going to give me even a much better group. Okay, so I took 5 shots, and what I saw is that it hit here and here. So only 2 of the 5 shots got on the paper. The other 3 were someplace off to the left and low. Okay, so these 2 shots gave me that information that I'm hitting low, and it looks like I'm going left. So what I did is I adjusted the scope. Okay, I went 2 clicks up and then 2 clicks to the right. Okay, and what I did is I took another 5 shots, and I've marked them here in red. Okay, so I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so this is a total of 11 inches at 400 yards. Okay, so that's great. I would have liked to adjust it another clicks over to the right and take another 5 shots, but I kind of ran out of time. So that's fine. I'm here today. I got a lot more time today, and what I did is I said, hey, the adjustments that I made, let's take this back out to the 100 yards, and let's see where I hit. Okay, so basically I took this out to the 100 yards. I just took 3 shots, and remember, I went up 2 clicks, right 2 clicks, and I landed over here. Okay, so I'm off to the right over here. So we got some really interesting information here. The first piece of information is that since today, because obviously the wind's not going to have that much of a chance to impact my bullets, obviously the zero that I had yesterday was correct, and it was the wind that had pushed my bullets to the left. Okay, so it's not like my scope had moved or lost zero or anything. Because when I adjusted it to the right today, when I came and I shot it, I'm way off to the right here. Okay, if I was in the center, then I would have been worried. I would have said, okay, this scope's not holding zero. But it came over to the right, which means now I gotta adjust this 2 clicks back to the left, so that at 100 yards it will be centered. Okay, so the way this type of a scope is meant to be used, right, the one that has the ACSS reticle, you're not supposed to dial in adjustments at the turns. Okay, so these turns are capped. So you're supposed to get a 0 at 100 yards, and that's it, right? You're done, and then you're supposed to use the reticle to make your wind adjustments or your elevation adjustments for distance. You're not supposed to start fumbling with the dial. And again, this is one of the things that I'm working through, and I'm trying to build up some confidence and know that this is how this is going to work and that it will work. So basically, this is going to have to go back to where it was, right? It's going to go 2 clicks to the left, and the next time I'm out there, I have to pay attention, better attention to the wind. And basically, if it's pushing, if it's pushing to the left, I gotta use the reticle to adjust over to the right. And we're going to talk about more of that in a minute. But what I want to do is I want to talk about the elevation adjustment, because if you notice over here, right, the day before, right, I had put my chevron right underneath the bullseye here, and I was pretty much impacting on the bullseye. But the thing is, at 400 yards, I was hitting a little bit low. So it's better for me to keep this at 100 yards, to keep it at this elevation. Because here's the thing. Remember, if you got a 50-yard 0 on the rifle that has just like a 2-way dot, you got a 50-yard 0 at 100 yards, you're going to be like 3 to 4 inches high. And then at 200 yards, you drop that back down for your second 0. So you're already comfortable with the idea of being 3 to 4 inches high at 100 yards. I mean, this is actually an improvement, because I'm only let me get a tape out here. So with this scope, with this setup, I'm only 2 1/4 inches high at 100 yards. So this is fine. I'm perfectly okay with being 2 1/4 inches high at 100 yards, and that will give me the ability to basically get in the center at 400 yards. Okay, so that's where I'm going to keep that. So this data is really important, because I'm doing this video so that in the future I can come back to this, right? Because this is now a 16-inch barrel, because these numbers might change if you are going to change if you got a different length barrel, different weight bullet. Okay, so on a 16-inch barrel with a 55 grain bullet, okay, when I zero in my ACSS reticle at 100 yards, I want to be 2 1/4 inches high. All right, 2 1/4 inches high, which will allow me to get in the center at 400 yards. Okay, and that's where that's going to stay. Now, as far as the wind, this reticle does have wind holes in the ladder. There's a ladder underneath it. Now, one of the things I don't like about the ACSS reticle, is probably the only thing I don't like about this particular one, is that the wind holes are for 5-mile-per-hour winds. Okay, I would have preferred that it was for 10-mile-per-hour winds, and the reason is, if it's for a 10-mile-per-hour wind, well, if you've got a 5-mile-per-hour wind, you could just cut the distance in half. Or if you got, let's say, a 20-mile-per-hour wind, well, you can just double it, right? So it's a lot easier to work off of a 10-mile-per-hour, wind markings on your reticle versus 5. Because now with the 5-mile-per-hour wind, I mean, great. If I've got a 10-mile-per-hour wind, okay, great. I gotta double it. All right, that's easy. That's it. You can easily visualize that in the reticle. But now if you got a 50-mile-per-hour wind, you gotta triple that distance, right? That starts to get a little bit more difficult. A little bit, if it's a 20-mile-per-hour wind, now you got quadruple that distance. So now there's a greater chance for error. So that's why I would have preferred that the wind holes in the ACSS were at 10 miles per hour instead of 5, so that all I gotta do is either cut in half or double it, depending on if I got a 5-mile-per-hour wind or a 15-mile-per-hour. Well, no, yeah, if I got either a 5-mile-per-hour wind, I would double it, and if I had, let's say, a 20-mile-per-hour wind, I would double it, and if I'm somewhere in between, I can cut that distance in half. So I think it's a lot easier to work with 10-mile-per-hour wind holes versus 5. Now, I think the reason they went with 5 is because I think that they're thinking that most people aren't crazy enough to be shooting when the wind is like, 10, 15 and 20 miles per hour. I mean, they don't know me, but I think that's the reason why they went with the 5 mile per hour wind. They're probably thinking that most people might be shooting, from, they're more likely to be shooting if it's 3 miles per hour. So if they're with the 5 mile per hour wind hose, they can cut it in half, to get like 2.5 miles or 3 miles per hour. Or they're probably thinking that the most people will shoot in is a 10 mile per hour wind. So I think that's the reason why they went with the 5 mile per hour wind markings as opposed to the 10, which I would have liked to see. But anyway, the point here being that I figured out where I want to be as far as elevation. Like when I zero in at 100 yards, 2¼ inches high from my bullseye, right? Where the tip of the chevron touches the bullseye, 2¼ inches high. And then when I get out to 400 yards and then some, I gotta drop some more wind ribbons along the path of where I'm going to be shooting, and better account for the wind and make the proper wind holes. Okay, so that's the lesson from yesterday. Let me know what you guys think. Let me know if you guys found this interesting or useful. Is this something that you guys might be able to use at some point for yourselves? But I'm very happy with this setup, this Palmetto, and this Primary Arms ACSS. I'm actually planning to get a second one because this one came off of my Ruger MPR, which has an 18-inch barrel. It's basically an upgraded barrel. That one has hit 0.75 inches at 100 yards, right? And when I bought that was like a $600 rifle, and some people have told me they've been able to get that as cheap as like $550 and $525. If I ever see that go on sale for $525, I'll definitely grab another one. But I am planning to get another one of these Primary Arms 1-8 ACSSs because I want to have, because this one's not going to go back on the original one that it came off of, and the new one's going to end up going on this one. And the reason is because at 18 inches, that's a pretty heavy gun. Especially because this whole setup here adds like 1.5 pounds to it. With the 16-inch barrel, this is not terrible. I mean, there's definitely a little bit more weight there, but this is not a terribly heavy rifle. So that's why I want to have, aside from keeping one on the other rifle with the 18-inch barrel, I want to have one on this 16-inch because I think that there's definitely some good stuff I can do with this rifle over here. So, all right, thanks a lot for watching, and I will talk to you guys soon.